What's going on, FPL managers? Good morning to you all. Good evening, good afternoon, as the FPL wires say. Not in that order, though. It's 30 minutes till the deadline, and we've had that 2-week insufferable long period where there's no football. But football's back, and I'm joined by Gianni and Mark. How are you both? Gianni, start with you.
I'm very well, thank you, mate. I'm actually still recovering from the Football Content Awards after my 5 a.m. finish. So,
oh, wow. Did you go on for that long, Gianni?
I did. I was down to the last 10, I'd say. Yeah.
Goodness me. And congratulations to Mark and Az on the FPL Black Box, scooping up the awards. It's like Lord of the Rings, Return of the King at the Oscars a few years ago, isn't it?
Thank you. Yeah, it was a really good night. I thought the event itself was brilliant, and I know it's grown a lot in the last few years, but it really surprised me how big it was. And sharing, I think one of the biggest things to me, obviously the award was nice, but one of the biggest things to me is just having fantasy content creators there in the same room as some of the really big mainstream football influencers. It was really, really cool. And I hope that we stay part of that and we get even bigger, like more categories, more people turning up. Because again, it'll be one of those events like Fest where you can go and meet some of the community guys, and it was guys and girls, and it was really like that on the night. It wasn't really about the awards. It was about all of us getting together again and saying hi to people from other podcasts and websites. And for that, it was really good.
Definitely. Onwards and upwards with the FPL community, I say. There's no reason why it can't. Look at America, for example. So we'll see. But yeah, Mark, you were up till, 3 a.m. last night on Spaces?
I'm addicted to Spaces, Ted. What am I going to do? For people who don't know, Spaces is a thing that's in beta on Twitter. You can only use it on your phone, I understand. You can access it on desktop, but you can't interact fully with it. You can listen in. But it basically is like an open chat room, like a radio broadcast live over Twitter. So you can open up a room, people can come in, and then they can request the mic and speak. And basically there's been quite a few crop up throughout the week, but I'm a big fan of the Friday night ones, because I find on a Friday night, I'm always like, my partner's in bed and it's quiet, and I'm thinking about FPL. I hadn't made my transfer till about 2 a.m. last night either. So I'm always up for a bit of FPL. So I kind of crash these Spaces on Twitter, and there was a couple last night. I was in with Zoff from The Wire, Brandon from Always Cheating, loads of names from the community. I think it was Chance of FPL who set it up, and we were on till 3 a.m. So it was good.
Really good enabler for the community to have a voice. Just when we're talking here, it's just us talking at you guys, but Spaces, you can come and have a chat with us. So it's really good. And I think there's loads of members in the community that set up those. So definitely keep an eye out if you're not involved already. Let's get straight into the teams, shall we? Start with you, Gianni. 4-3-3, mate. What's going on?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, probably 4-3-3. I've got a few options, and I've got a fair few players in my team that like could very easily start or could very easily be benched. So I expect to get 11 out, but yeah, I'm kind of in two minds with, do I start Rafinha, thinking if he does play it, it'll only be 10, 15, 20 minutes, but then that's a good 20 minutes for Rafinha possibly when the game's very open. Is that better than a Livramento, for example, that's going to play 90, but you expect to concede? So yeah, I mean, double Chelsea at the back, double City, I'm fairly happy with that. My transfer in was Rudiger out for James. My hand was forced there. I actually wanted to roll. I wildcarded last week. I don't like using a transfer the week after you've wildcarded unless it's booked in, but again, I'm often very anti that unless you've got a really nice 1 week punt. So triple City, triple Chelsea, hoping Jimenez starts, hoping Foden starts. Not so confident on the latter, but Foden was never a pick for 1 or 2 weeks. He is someone I know I will take those benches, and he'll start 2 and 3 Premier League games, and when he does, I feel like I've got a good chance of being in the points. I feel a bit mugged off from my last week's 7 points on Foden. I think that was a 15-pointer. So disappointing to see his ownership's gone from like 0.7 to like 3-4%. But I can see why people are getting on him.
Yeah, I remember our conversation from last week, Gianni, where you had Greenwood in your wildcard squad, and you took the plunge on stream, didn't you? Greenwood to Foden, so that proved to be an excellent move. Just go with your gut, and that's proven correct for you. Right, there's a lot of questions here, I think, and there's a lot of people that would be debating whether they play Rafinha over Livramento, but obviously you don't have that question because you're potentially benching both of them.
Yeah.
So our question to you guys, if you had Livramento and Rafinha, which one would you play ahead of each other? Because it's either backing one or the other against the other one, right? Mark, start with you.
I think Gianni's got it bang on. I think that's what I would do. The order would be Livramento first. I mean, Leeds are pretty fragile. Livramento's a good option going forward for Southampton. He's someone they look to get them up the pitch. And I think the Rafinha might get minutes, but I think Leeds will have to be in trouble for him to get on the pitch. And if Leeds are in trouble, that means they're losing, and Livramento might have chipped in with an assist. So I do think, with Bamford missing as well, this is a really tough game for Leeds, because I think it's one they need to get a result from to get a foothold. Because if they lose it, it's starting to become a bit concerning, because they're playing a team who are around them in the table. So I think I would go with what Gianni's got there as well. I think I would have Livramento first off the bench.
That's interesting. I will come to my team at the end, but I've gone the other way around. I don't know why, but maybe I'll make a last minute change.
There's still time. Ted. I must admit, I am flip flopping a lot on this, and then I'm thinking I'm probably overthinking it, because there's a chance Foden or Cancelo or Jimenez or maybe even Reece James, like one of those four guys, there is a chance they don't start, and actually I'll probably end up just with 11 in my squad that actually play, and my 11 therefore, fits itself. But
I think this game week's going to be carnage. I think for people,
bench points.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a lot of bench players coming in this week. Son is potentially, it's speculated that he's out with COVID, which is gutting for owners, especially with such a juicy fixture. I think they've got Newcastle, don't they? So tough. And Foden, there's a lot of speculation that he doesn't start, but obviously you hope that he does. Even Cancelo, that he may not start because Zinchenko is available. So yeah. It's terrible. But let's talk about the Rudiger injury, because I made that transfer as well, Rudiger out. And were you tempted to keep, because there was no time frame on the injury? Is that something that's worrying to you, or was there a potential to keep Rudiger for one more week and see what happens?
Yeah, I was tempted. And the only reason I've made this transfer is because I've got a free transfer with no obvious plan. I was going to roll my transfer. My eventual plan is to bring Trent back, get Tony in. The money from selling in Antonio or Jimenez to Tony allows me to upgrade one of my City or Chelsea defenders to Trent. But I don't want to make those moves for a few weeks anyway. So I'm looking at it going, I've got this spare transfer. I've got a red flag on Rudiger. Reece James, who long-term, given a choice over Rudiger and Reece James, I want Reece James all day long. I'm always there for the upside with defenders. The only reason I didn't go Reece James on wildcard was because he was red flagged, and we thought he might miss a couple of weeks. Knowing Rudiger could be injured, we have no idea, do we? He really could be out for a couple of weeks. I just thought, why not take that move now, knowing it's a free transfer?
Yeah, absolutely. Here's a question for you. If you could pick one Man City forward or attacking player other than De Bruyne, who would you pick going forward? Would you stick with Foden, or would you change?
Foden all day long for me. All I need with Foden, and all I needed a couple of weeks ago with Foden, was touch maps, heat maps. You just see where he's playing on the football pitch. He's so involved. When he's playing false nine, he's great. When he's wide, he's great. He's not playing in the midfield three, and we thought he might this season. He's still a front three player. He's direct. Grealish is starting to look like there's not a huge amount of end product there. He's getting the minutes, yes, but he's looking a bit like a YouTube highlights reel at the moment for Grealish, as much as I love him. And if we remember at Villa, he looked like that for 5-6 years. He had one good spell at Villa last season. Most of the season, he was amazing for FPL. But I'm starting to see signs with Grealish, and I'm thinking you're not going to be a great FPL asset. Brilliant footballer, no doubt. But for me, it's Foden.
What about you, Mark? Which Man City player would you pick?
It would be Foden, but I just don't want to go there. I mean, I've got Jota, and I'm quite happy with Jota. It's what I've said this week. I haven't really understood why. Well, I do understand it's because they got Burnley, right? And I think, and people have got wildcards active, so that's why when you've got the wildcard active and City have got Burnley, you feel like you need to move to it. I understand that, but I think long term, it's like today, right? I don't think Jota will start, but I think he'll get 25 minutes, and when he does come on, he'll probably play centre forward for Liverpool against Watford. When Foden comes off the bench, where's he going to play? He could play in any position, and I think Jota plays in every match, whether he starts or comes on, whereas Foden isn't that guaranteed of that. Plus, Foden's more expensive. Data's better for Jota. So I don't see long-term why a City midfielder is better than Jota. But if I had to go for one, it would be Foden, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely take your point on that. And I think there's going to be two camps all the way through the season on this, because at the end of the day, they're both going to be subject to rotation. They're both playing for attacking teams. They both have the potential to score points. It's just depends which side of the fence you fall on. But yeah, I think Foden's a good option. I've got Mason Mount, so I'm like,
wow. I've seen a bit of Mount movement today, actually, this morning. I've seen Mount crop up in some wildcards. I mean, Gianni, what do you think of him? Because you know him, you know the boy, right?
Yeah, Money Mace, one of my fave players. I do wonder a little bit like what I said about Grealish. I do sometimes wonder with Mount if he's just a phenomenal footballer, but not going to be a great FPL asset. But then you look at the numbers, and they are there for Mount.
Really strong. Yeah.
So good. And last year, if Werner could hit a barn door, then he would have got so many assists last year. And then it was like, okay, this season he's going to get bags because instead of Werner to hit, he's going to have Lukaku to hit. And we haven't seen it yet, but he has been out of form. Mount looks like he's been overplayed, looks like he needed a rest. And because he had that injury, he has had a little bit of a rest now. So many minutes for one so young. When you look at last season plus the Euros, he just looked tired at the start of the season, but I'm hoping now he's had his rest. Although he didn't look good for England the other night, although he often doesn't. I do think there's quite a nice differential there, and I see why you've gone there, Ted.
Yeah, I think I remember having a conversation with you a couple of weeks ago about it, but I've been through the ringer with Mount because I brought him in way before wildcard. And then he was injured and benched and subbed off and subbed on and all this sort of stuff. So I thought, I haven't had enough of that misery, so let's get him back in on wildcard. But anyway,
we do this to ourselves, don't we?
We do.
But I think Tuchel's comments about his relationship with Lukaku is really promising. But the fact that he didn't even start last game week, hopefully that's just because he's fresh back from injury and he didn't want to risk him from the beginning. I'm just going to keep my fingers crossed that he starts the next few for Chelsea because they've got some plum fixtures. Brentford, Norwich, Newcastle, Burnley. Can't get much better than that, I'd say. Yeah. So fingers crossed for Mount starting. But yeah, I'm jealous of you guys owning Foden and Jota, to be honest. I'd rather change.
Well, one thing we can guarantee, unlike Foden and Jota, is Mount will start. Like that's you bring in Mount and you know you've got a 90-minute man who's going to start sort of 80 to 90% of Premier League games, I'd say, pretty much nailed.
Are you 100% he's nailed, though? Because Timo Werner, you've got Havertz as well.
Yeah.
There's
They're
quite a lot
for the same spot. Lukaku and Mount in a front three, for me, are nailed.
I think he's in their first 11, right? But there are times he got benched the other week. But I think first choice 11
at half time as well, which was weird.
Yeah, I know. So it's because of his, like you say, I think it's the fatigue, Johnny. Yeah. I think that's the problem at the moment. So when and Reece James, I think he's key to the whole team setup. I think it's clear that we saw James start immediately at wing back with Lukaku at Arsenal, and then against City when everyone was going like, "Oh, is James going to come back in?" Yes, straight in. Obviously, he got the injury, which was a pain because I had him for that game. So I want Reece James. I mean, next week, the Norwich game, I'm probably going to do Alonso to James just to get James in my team because I think he's going to be gold. Let's
move on to your team, Mark, because you've been through the ringer with Chelsea defenders.
Oh, luck. So, my tactic was I'm going to make some defensive transfers to set my team up, get the 2 Chelsea defenders in with Lukaku early, and then concentrate on my midfield because that's where I want to make my transfers. And I haven't been able to because I got James in first of all, and he didn't start. Yeah, wait, I got him after that, but he didn't start at Spurs, so I had him on the bench then. Then he started the City game and got injured straight away. So then I did, obviously what I've done there, I should have got Rudiger in, but then Alonso was tempting me, so I went to Alonso, foolishly, instead of Rudiger. Alonso had a poor game and then got dropped for Chilwell. Then I eventually went Rudiger, which was a sensible thing to do. I went, right, now I'm just going to go Rudiger, get it all done, locked down, and then Rudiger got injured. Rudiger's now injured. So I've yet to make a successful Chelsea defensive transfer so far in 3 attempts. So my tactic now is I've left it. I've put Rudiger on the bench because I think I hope that he'll be available for the Norwich game. And then it gives me the option of either keeping Alonso for Norwich if Chilwell plays midweek, for example, or going Alonso to James, which is probably what I'll do. Because I look at Son and Bomo and Benrahma, and I think I can leave them for another week. I think Benrahma's got Spurs at home. Sars, I think at Everton, which isn't that bad. And then Bomo's at home as well to Leicester, I think. So I think I can play those 3 next week if they're fit, and then make the Alonso to James move.
Can we just talk about how Alonso has just been the biggest honey trap at the start of the season?
Yeah.
We just 6 straight games in a row, and he was excellent, getting FPL returns from an FPL perspective, I should say. And everyone was going, "Oh, a fit Alonso. We should have had him from the start of the season." And the community that got sucked in without overthinking it, the people who didn't overthink, which I think is a viable strategy most of the time, just he was one of the most brought in players that week. And I remember talking to you, Gianni, about it, saying don't bring in Alonso because he's probably going to get dropped real well. Yeah. But without that contextual information, he just sucked everyone in and then just got dropped.
I wrote a thread on this, Ted, because and just ahead of last week, and just to say, yes, we haven't seen a Chilwell start yet, but it's a matter of time. And then it happened and he played really well. Yeah. And those that went Alonso early on, I massively see why. I think it was a good move. Like, it was, at the time, he's nailed, he's playing. Tuchel had said Chilwell's state of mind isn't right after the Euros. Came out and publicly said that. You don't often hear that in the press. But now Chilwell's getting minutes and Alonso is playing international football, because we all thought, Alonso will get a break this 2 weeks. Played 2 games for Spain and he played really well. I watched both those Spain games. They beat Italy, they lost to France, but Alonso in a back 4 played really well.
Yeah.
Really, and he was still as attacking as you see him in a 5. And I just think all season we are going to see a share of minutes there. I think they're both playing well now, and we're going to see Alonso. I think Alonso does start today just because I think his height will be useful, but I think we're going to see a share of minutes there.
Yeah, I don't think Chilwell is automatically first choice. I still think Alonso might have the shirt at the moment, because I think the performances of Spain Tuchel would have seen that and gone, right. But I think basically as soon as one of them has a bad game, the other one's in.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So Alonso's got to be consistent, which is what he's struggled with, hasn't he?
Yeah. Do you remember, Mark, when Tuchel came to the club though? Like, the first thing he did was the first 10 games, you looked at it and went, spotting what Tuchel wants to do with wing backs is impossible. He was rotating every week at right wing back and at left wing back. We were seeing Hudson-Odoi, we were seeing Pulisic, wide forwards, sometimes even playing there. Emerson was getting games. He hasn't, since he's been at Chelsea, he's not shown a massive amount of faith in Chilwell. So, yeah, for me, I'm with you. I think that shirt is up for grabs, and Alonso's still got it probably in the bigger games at the moment.
It's interesting because they always used to play 4 at the back when Alonso was a regular starter, and he used to maraud forward at left back. So I think he's still fairly versatile in that position. But yeah, it's a really interesting conversation, interesting debate. I think once you move Alonso to James, Mark, that will be the best back 3 you can get, surely. Alexander,
that's I think so. I mean, I love defenders who offer me attacking options, right? Like Diaz is probably the sensible pick. Rudiger is probably the sensible pick, but that's not how I play the game. So, exactly. I like to have players on the pitch who can get me attacking returns.
Love that. And the triple Liverpool, I think that's probably a big differential nowadays, because people might have moved out Alexander-Arnold.
Maybe, yeah.
And definitely might have moved on to the bandwagon of City midfielders instead of Jota. So if Liverpool crush Watford at 12:30, then you'll be laughing. So talk to me about Sarr and Mbeumo. What's the long-term strategy for them? Because they've done you good in the most recent weeks, and I think
I don't know. Mbeumo I haven't got enough out of. Like, I got in him early, and he's now becoming a player to look at in the wild card. He's coming into squads, and I haven't really had the returns that I'd look from him, because he's had chances and he's got a couple of goals, but he should have really got a few more points for me. He's a keep because the fixtures are really good. And the way that they're working together is Tony's coming deep and flicking the ball on for Mbeumo. And I think that's what we'll see today. Chelsea will have Christensen and Chalobah. Tony could dominate them in the air. So I think the flick-ons to Mbeumo will be a thing. So, yeah, he's definitely a keep for me, Mbeumo, no doubt. Sarr, I'm keeping to see what Ranieri's Watford look like today, because I'm hoping we see a bit more attacking intent. And if you're Ranieri, right, you sit down on day one of the job, and your first thing is, right, stop conceding goals. Your second thing is get Sarr more involved, because he's the one who's going to save us, basically. It's not hard. It's so obvious, right? So I'm hoping I see today some evidence of Ranieri's first steps to making Sarr more of a factor. He could even be in a 2 up front. I don't know, but we'll see. So it's worth keeping him to see what Ranieri's Watford look like, and that it's Everton, Southampton next. That's all right, So I think I'm fine.
I think we might see him up front, Mark.
Might do.
Like Ranieri, think of Ranieri at Leicester. Like I know Vardy was like a bit of a freak. Like there wasn't many players around like him, and he happened to be a natural striker. But the pace in behind, as Ranieri likes to play on the counter with a Vardy, you could go with a similar tactic with Sarr, who you partner with a bit of a workhorse like a Okazaki. At Leicester, and Watford have got a lot of them up front. They've got a lot of forwards that aren't the most glamorous. They'll do a job for you. I think that could be a nice front two when you put Sarr down the middle.
Well, he's got to get him more involved, because I watched Watford play, and it's like when Sarr does touch it and get involved, things happen. Defences panic, and he wins free kicks or gets crosses into the box. But the rest of the team seem one or two paces behind him, understandably, I guess. But also tactically, they're not getting him in good situations often enough. Obviously, Norwich they did, but that's because it was Norwich, I think.
Yeah, and that's where the difficulties come. And if you compare Watford to Brentford, Sarr is a one-man team effectively. That might be a little bit harsh, but as you say, he's a couple of paces ahead of everyone else. And if the rest of the team don't pull their weight in tougher matches, then he gets left behind just by default. Whereas Brentford are always going to get their chances because they play so cohesively, and it's really interesting to compare those teams, I'd say. But it'd be interesting to see what Ranieri does. I think it's a really good signing for Watford, to be fair. Even though it is, a merry-go-round of managers at Watford, it tends to be. But yes, so this is a pre-wildcard team, Mark. What's your long-term wildcard strategy? Is it just to keep it as long as possible and hope?
I'd like to have an answer to that. I don't really. I look at there's a fixture swing with Spurs in game week 12, but it's Spurs, and will we trust them by then? Maybe that will trigger it. I think my tactic at the moment is get my team as close as I can to what wildcards are, because I think a lot of teams are wildcarding into Lukaku and wildcarding into Mbomo, and they go in a City mid where I've got Jota, but that's not a major difference. They're going to have Cancelo, a Chelsea defender, and probably Trent. So I don't think my team's going to be massively different from a general wildcard team in a couple of weeks. So then my tactic will be, can I use the wildcard to move quite a way away from the teams around me, but by also making my team stronger? So like if Calvert-Lewin comes back in and starts doing bits, if Son is fit and starts doing bits, using the wildcard to move my team away from everybody else, but by also strengthening it. But that's difficult to do, because always what you're looking at with the wildcard is my wildcard team going to outperform the team I've currently got? And you've got to be pretty certain of that to commit. And, I haven't got back, for that to happen, and Bomo, Sarr, Benrahma and Antonio and those players have got to be looking like they're not producing. And so far, they haven't been, they haven't had real dry spells to make me think that, it's time to get rid. Benrahma, obviously the concern is the Europa League, but he's had a long rest now. He's been away with Algeria, but he was on the bench for the second game, I think. So I'm hoping he's okay for Everton. And I think he's good enough. He's probably good enough to get me points even when West Ham are fatigued, because I think he's such a key player for them.
I just can't get my head around how good Antonio is this season. He's just blowing the stats. He's just better than any other player. And I just can't see, even with the tougher fixtures coming up, why we would look to get rid of him. And as you say, Mark, Benrahma is still a good shout. He's actually, at the start of the season, he was getting the returns, but he wasn't actually great on the number of stats. But recently, his stats are actually improving. So there's no reason to get rid, from my opinion. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm really impressed by West Ham, just in general, under David Moyes, as we've been echoing for the last year or so, I'd say. Let's move on to my team, lastly. And I might make a last minute change. I'm not 100% sure. I've got Rafinha starting there. But the problem is, I think I would probably play Livramento over Rafinha, but I don't really want to back against Rafinha, even if he gets minutes off the bench. It just seems counterintuitive to me. But we've had this conversation before, and you guys said you would play Livramento over Rafinha, so it's interesting.
Do you think he plays, Ted? That's the question. Do you think you can see him coming off the bench? Most of the other Brazilians have been ruled out by their managers. They wouldn't dream of... Jurgen Klopp would not dream of risking injury by playing them. We don't know what Bielsa does, because he doesn't have a team full of internationals every window where you can go, we can look back at previous data. I'm just not so sure. I mean, he's such an experienced manager. He would have managed internationals a lot coming from South America to Europe. He's managed in Spain and Italy, remember? I think it would be naive to risk the guy. What do you think, Mark?
Totally. It's a very good point about what you raised, because obviously he's managed out there. He knows exactly what it takes out of you to do those trips. And they've got injuries elsewhere in the team. Like they've got Bamford out. And also Rafinha's had a hip injury going into the international break too. If you remember, he's been taken off on 60 minutes. So it's not like he went away with Brazil fresh as a daisy. He looked brilliant for Brazil, of course, right? So he's flying. So that's the one thing that makes me think, well, maybe he gets some minutes. But I think you're right. I think Bielsa and Bielsa's team, I would have them down as one of the most savvy coaching teams in the Premier League. Yeah. And they'll have all the data, all the information that will say playing Rafinha for even 10 minutes will be a risk. And he said we won't take a risk. So I don't think he gets minutes at all. I would fall down. Like if I had to choose between him getting, he's not going to start. I'm certain of that. Is he going to get 20 minutes? Well, they'd have to be in real trouble, I think, for him to come on off the pitch and then take a risk. So, in a 1-1 scenario, he's not coming on, is he? They'll take the draw, I think. So, the scenario whereby they need to bring Rafinha on, what is that? What, 2-0 down, 3-0 down? And if that is the case, like I say, and you started Livramento, the fact that Livramento is quite a good contributor to Southampton's creativity means that he might have got you something. I actually think there won't be many goals in the game because I don't think Southampton have got many goals in them. I can see a 1-0 either way.
You've convinced me. I've made the change. What
have we done?
I can tell you're on your phone, Ted. I was thinking you're looking down. I think he's doing the change. I mean, they've got Wolves and Norwich up next, Leeds. They have two very winnable games. You can't, without Bamford, you cannot go to Wolves and Norwich without Rafinha. He's so important to them.
Exactly. I think that's a useful. The only saving grace with Rafinha is it's Bielsa and Bielsa. I mean, Seb. When we always talk to Seb about Leeds, he always goes on about Bielsa's not lack of trust in the remaining squad, but his desire to play the starting 11 players as often as he can, and it's a little bit of a bias. Like if it's a 50-50 decision, he will go and play that starting 11 player like Rafinha. But those comments he made in the press conference were pretty ambiguous, to say the least. And I love Karam's on Twitter, like following the flight.
Yeah. That was amazing.
I was hoping he was going to tell us what he had for his meal on the way over. Did he have chicken or fish? But yeah.
Commitment to the cause there. I love that. But I mean, yeah, he landed in wherever it was midday yesterday. So
Biggin Hill.
Yeah, so I imagine he won't play.
He spent 200 quid in duty free, apparently, Ted, as well.
Love that. On cigarettes or something. Brilliant. So my transfer this week was Rudiger to Alexander-Arnold. My original plan was to do Semedo to Alexander-Arnold, but it looks like Semedo's staying in the team, which is kind of annoying.
No, it's all right. One thing we didn't ask Gianni, actually, you bought in Trent, Ted. Do you fear the Trent today? And how much do you fear him? Right.
I wish I had enough money in my bank to have gone Rudiger to Trent. I didn't, and I do have a plan for Trent. And for those that have wildcarded last week and gone without Trent, I think you probably all had a plan to get him back in, but probably it was never going to be back in for Watford. Then they got United next week. It was probably back in 3 or 4 weeks. So I'm kind of committing to no Trent for the next couple. And then as soon as Tony comes in, it gives me the money for Trent. And I still don't know who I'll sell, one of the City or Chelsea lads. But yeah, Trent, very few defenders in this game over the time FPL has been a thing, right? Over 10 plus years, would we be able to say that defender's got a 15 to 20 point haul in them? Trent's one of those guys. So.
Did you see his tweet as well?
Yeah, and I don't think he's ever tweeted about FPL.
That's quality. Love that.
Yeah.
So you only have to get through this week, Gianni. Like at Watford away is the fixture, and you need to get away with it because Man United next week, and then all your cards fall into place with the transfers. Yeah. So yeah, I'm going to say I hope it doesn't work out for you because I really want some Alexander-Arnold points.
Yeah, because I'm guessing his ownership's dropped quite nicely for you guys that are on it. I'm guessing he's sort of had a 5 to 10% drop.
I don't know. That's another thing this season. I talked about not really paying attention to price rise. I've hardly looked at ownership either. I don't know why I've got this laissez-faire attitude to things like that this season, but I just have, and it's quite nice, so I'm just sticking with it. Yeah,
23% owned now.
Oh, that's great. I mean,
yeah. That's
Very,
good.
very
I
low.
mean, that's good. It's good. I mean, going into any game with Trent only 23% owned, I think it's not really the clean sheets. He offers so much in attack, doesn't he? And I mean, there's not a game goes by where I think, well, I don't think I'm going to get a return from Trent. I almost expect it now. An assist in 1 and 2 games. So yeah. And he's shooting quite often as well. So yeah, sorry, I don't want to build it up, Gianni. I don't want to.
No, you're right. I mean, what I'm loving about Trent is he's taken up some of those inside positions which we haven't seen in years gone by, Cancelo style positions, which, and yeah, he's gonna be shooting on sight. I'm really scared of Trent, and I'm doing the watch along at 12:30. So do come and watch on this channel. It will be me and Ed to watch Liverpool hopefully win, and hopefully a Trent blank for me, but loads of Salah captain points for all of us, I'm sure.
Yeah,
love that. Oh yeah, you had to make it up to Ed for not asking him on last week, so that's completely fair play.
Yeah, and I thought with the Newcastle thing, I'll be getting we'll have a little bit of a Newcastle chat as well.
Brilliant stuff. Well, the deadline is passed, gents. I've locked in Livramento starting, which is probably going to bite me, but I'll come back to blame you both, so it's fine. But I think do we have anything else to talk about? I'm not going to hang around for team news because that's another half an hour, but I think we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for joining me. And yeah, make sure to check out Gianni and Ed's watch along Liverpool versus Watford. 12:15. Okay, I'll make sure I sign up and heckle you from the chat.
good luck with Mount, Ted. I think that could be a nice pick for you. We'll see.
We'll see. I mean, it's one of those preemptive transfers, isn't it? That he's had such a dire sub on, sub off injury. It's like he hasn't really got the figures, the returns that give me super amount of faith in him. But it's a leap of faith. Let's hope it pays off.
We want is another Liverpool-Brentford game, starting 3-3, don't we? I'd love another game like that.
That was a Saturday 5:30 game. So, you know.
Yeah.
You never know.
The stars, Ted. It's going to be a high-scoring one. I mean, Brentford have shown us like they're really good at the back, and then we saw them against Liverpool when they actually face really strong opposition. They can be very open. So this game could have goals. I mean, I've got double Chelsea defence, and despite I think the bookies' odds are a 50% clean sheet for them. I really could see if Brentford score 1, I could see them scoring 2 quite easily.
I think they score.
With Rudiger and Thiago Silva out, the passing out from the back becomes a little bit more difficult, I'd say. And if Brentford have a decent press on them, then they can definitely catch Chelsea out, I'd say.
Yeah, and in the air as well. I mean, Chalobah's not, he's decent in the air, but Tony was giving Van Dijk a hard time. So, I think there's something in it for him.
Christensen's not brilliant in the air either. Like Thiago Silva and Rudiger, 2 of our strongest headers of the ball, both out. We got Chalobah will be left centre back. We've not seen him play left centre back in a Chelsea shirt. Although I think last season on loan he did play there a bit, but it's going to be a very different looking back 3. You got Aspi right centre back, Christensen in the middle, Chalobah left centre back.
Right,
that's as weak as our back 3 will be this season, arguably.
Yeah, and Alonso thrown into it for defensive security, maybe, but yeah.
Goodness me. Right, I really hope that we don't have to use our benches this week, but I'm preparing myself.
I think I'll have 10 men, but we'll see. I mean, I fear that Veltman might get rested with Lamptey coming in and stuff like that, and then I don't have a sub. So there's all kinds of issues, I think. And like you said, I think some of us are going to be suffering a bit this week, but it's only 1 week, and FPL's not a 1 week game. So
exactly, love that. We'll end on that positive note. I think we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for joining me, both of you, and best of luck for Game Week 8. Football's back. That's the main headline.
Come on.